Hey guys, this is Jekar back with another battle report. This time we've got a 3,000 point game between my Dark Elves and my friend Chris's Ogres that you saw in the last report. We rolled up Dawn Attack, and you're going to have to bear with me. These first couple pictures are in shadows. It was early in the morning, and the way the light was coming through the windows, it was kind of hard to get some pictures, but I promise they clear up by the end. Like I said, this is Dawn Attack, so let me go ahead and go over my deployment from my left to right. I've got in the foreground, that's 2 units of 6 shades. They're there to harass the unit of lead belchers and generally be a nuisance. Um, Down here in the foreground, I've got a unit of 30 Corsairs. They've got full command and the Sea Serpent standard. My BSB is in there with full mundane kit and the standard of Hag Grief, or Grafe, or however you pronounce it. Gives them always strike first. And then I have a Lord on the other corner who has the Executioner's Axe and the Blood Armor. That's my general, the Dreadlord, and uh, he rolled way over here, and then everybody else did not, so he's kind of out of it. But I'm kind of depending on my general high leadership across the army to get me places. On the hill there, which is a scree slope, I have 12 repeater crossbowmen plus a musician. Next to them is my Hydra. Next to them is a unit of 10 Cold One Knights with a standard, and this is the unit that has the Gleaming Pendant, which I realized after I placed them should have been the farther away unit because my BSB is actually right just within range. So the Gleaming Pendant, of course, makes you reroll your first failed leadership test, and the way that we play, we call that instead of the BSB, since there's no choice whether or not to use the Gleaming Pendant. And so I misdeployed there. Right next to them is another unit of 10 Cold One Knights with the standard bearer. That's the unit that has the Banner of Eternal Flames that should have been closer to the BSB, especially when you see my first turn. And here's one of those pictures I was talking about that turned out really weirdly because of the lighting. Um, on the left, you can see the unit of Cold One Knights I was just talking about. In the shadow of that building, by the way, that building is a Tower of Blood, giving everybody hatred within 6 inches and giving my troops frenzy within 6 inches. Um, in the shadow of that Tower of Blood, there is 14 Corsairs with repeater handbows, and I will come to regret not giving them a musician later, but such is life. Next to the building, I have 20 Blackguard. They're ranked up so that they would fit, because remember, Dawn Attack means I can't always choose where I want. Behind them is a unit of 20 Dark Elf Warriors. The Dark Elf Warriors have a level 2 on Lore of Metal. She has Transmutation of Lead and Searing Doom. They're going to attempt to go in that house on the first turn with their Swift Reform. And then right at the top in the corner is 5 Harpies. And I guess you can't see it from the last picture, but behind the Harpies, you can kind of see it in this picture, is my level 4 on Lore of Shadow on a Dark Pegasus. She has a Pennant of Caleth and the Focus Familiar. Now, I really don't like to take Lore of Shadow in friendly games because it's really hard not to, Mind Razor, derp a derp. So I wanted to get the Withering and Pit and give Chris a little bit of a chance. Pit, of course, scatters, and Withering is stoppable and remains in play. But I didn't roll either of those. I rolled Enfeebling Foe, Steed of Shadows, Penumbral Pendulum, and Mind Razor. So I dropped Steed of Shadows for miasma. However, the tower right there, right in the top left of the picture, is a Wizard's Tower, which means that she has Lore Master, Lore of Shadow, while she's next to it, which is really important for the rest of the game. The piece of terrain there in the middle of the board with the sun shining brightly on it is a ruin of some kind. It's a charnel pit. Everybody within 6 inches is -1 leadership. And the thing in the foreground is a wording well. That's some Dwarven Forge stuff that Chris has that I think is excellent, especially for terrain. So his deployment from his left to his right, there's a Saber Tusk. That was the only thing that rolled out on that side. There's another Saber Tusk hiding in the shaft of light. Across the front of his lines, there's 3 units of 10 Noblars, each with a Groin Biter and a Musician. The Iron Blaster is sitting on an Anvil of Vol, which actually really disturbs me because flaming magical attacks are no bueno for my Hydra. The next to the Iron Blaster is a unit of 11 Iron Guts plus a level 4 on Lord of Heavens, who has Ice Shard Blizzard, Harmonic Convergence, Curse of the Midnight Wind, and Chain Lightning, and a level 1 Butcher on Lore of the Great Maw, who has the Stubborn spell. He rolled like the Maw. So next to the Iron Guts is 4 Mournfang. They rolled again over here in the center. He didn't have really a place to put them. He didn't want to put them in the water. He was scared of what it might be, so he put them too wide and too deep. And then right there in front of the water is a unit of 8 Man-Eaters. They got Stubborn and Swift Stride, single pistols, and there's a BSB with, oh, what's he have? He's got the Enchanted Shield, I think, and something else. So he's got like a 3-up armor save. And then there's the General in there as well. He's the guy holding a man aloft. And the General has the Obsidian Blade and the Talisman of Preservation and the Charm Shield. And the unit has the Dragonhide banner. And then, of course, you can see the Lead Belchers hanging out by that blazing barricade, hoping that they get first turn. Fortunately for me, I get first turn. And I move both units of the Shades up, and we just put the fence down because they're touching it, but they could move over it, like their back guys are hanging out on it. Everybody searches up. As you can see, I'm trying to push my Death Star unit with my General and BSB in it forward as far as possible, trying to get a charge. The Hydra moves up kind of cautiously. The crossbowmen move to get off the hill. They don't want to take any dangerous terrain tests. They also want to be able to shoot. Also, there is my completely overpowered coffee. It has peppermint mocha creamer in it, and that is amazing, and I'm glad that it exists. Here you can see kind of what happened. This unit on the right, the rightmost Cold One Knights, failed their stupidity test, and again, had they been closer to the BSB, had I switched places with the other Cold War Knights, they may have passed. So they shuffle up like 2 inches. You can see the Corsairs with the handbows pushing up. You can see the Blackguard pushing up on the other side of the building. Yeah, here's a better picture of it. The Blackguard have pushed up, and that's why they're 5 wide, just to fit through that impassable terrain. The Harpies have moved up. There's my level 4 on the Dark Peg. She's within 3 inches. And I swift reformed my Spearman Bunker and failed, so they just reformed. So next turn they'll be able to move into the building because they're like 4 inches away. So I'm a little sad about that they didn't get in this turn. So in shooting, this is pretty much what happened. I think I do 1 wound to the Man-Eaters with my crossbowmen, and I kill 2 Lead Belchers outright. They're within range. I don't actually think they're within range of the General at this point, but they passed their 7 leadership test to stay on the board, which is kind of frustrating. And it's at this point I realize, hey, I'm actually within 6 inches, so I'm not going to get a stand and shoot. So I start to wonder, do I accept the charge or do I not accept the charge? This picture is just to remind me that I started doing sneaky stuff. The Wizard's Tower says if you start within 3 inches, you gain Lore Master. So I used some dice. I started within 3 inches, gained Lore Master, and used some dice to cast Steed of Shadows to march my Peg Sorceress 20 inches over to try and cast some spells. And I didn't get any spells off, as you could see. But this is just to remind you that this is happening. And then for the rest of the game, essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to um, use her, Steed of Shadows her over after getting Lore Master, cast the spells I want to cast, and then on my next movement phase, I'm going to move 20 inches back over within 3 inches and get Lore Master, and then keep doing the same thing. And this is just an overview of what the board looks like, minus the shades. After my turn 1, just pushing up, bright light, and overpowered coffee. This is a picture of the Ogre's first turn. You can see everybody has pushed forward. The only charge that he made was the Lead Belchers into the rightmost shades. I decided to stand. I was unsure that that was a good idea, but I figured if I ran, he would probably charge the second unit, and I'd have to run with them too, and they may go off the board. And also, I was so close to him that he would have had a pretty easy time catching me if he tried. I was like 4 inches away, so I had to outroll him by 3 or more inches for him not to touch me, and that didn't seem very likely. So I just decided to take it and attempt to roll better than him and see what happened. The rest of everything you can see um, at the bottom here, right at the very bottom after the corner of the obscured by the corner of the Tower of Blood, there is the uh, Pegasus Supreme Sorceress that I moved in the magic phase that I was telling you about. Um, so his cannon is actually going to take a shot at her instead of the Hydra, which I am okay with. In his first turn magic phase, Chris gets Curse of the Midnight Wind off on the Hydra, which I let go. He also gets Ice Shard Blizzard off on the Blackguard, which I let go, and then he tries to Chain Lightning, which I attempt to stop and fail. And so Chain Lightning kills 3 of these Cold One Knights, and then fails to bounce. So I accept that. I did save one of those wounds with my armor save, but whatever. I just felt good about it. And his shooting, he shot at my uh, Supreme Sorceress on the peg, and his cannonball killed both of the Corsairs in front that it hit, but then it even failed to wound her, so that was nice. And so I'm feeling good about my Hydra not being targeted this turn. However, he did take a wound from the Maneater shooting, which I think Chris did just because I told him I didn't really like single pistols as far as Maneaters go. I think he did it just to spite me. Alright, so this is after combat. I did 1 wound to the Lead Belchers, who I think they killed exactly 6 guys, but my other Shades miraculously decided to hold. Usually when they take a panic test from combat, they flee, but these guys decided to hold and make me really happy. So I saved 96 points there. And again, I probably should have fled, but I think that the way that they were looking, they would have fled off the board. So apparently I'm missing some pictures. What happened here, I charged the Hydra and the Cold One Knights into the Noblars in front of the Mournfang. I lost 1 Cold One Rider to the Dangerous Train, and of course I wrecked them, and then I overran and they both hit the Mournfang. I only needed like a 4 or something to hit the Mournfang. Excuse me, so it was actually very easy. That was, of course, you can see the other Noblars here have been shot by my Corsairs with repeater handbows. Did quite a number on them and they fled. Of course, here you can see what I did. I turned my Shades around, took some more wounds off. I think I did 3 wounds to the Lead Belchers. Actually, if I recall correctly, that turn I got like 4 hits out of the 12 shots hitting on 4s, and I was kind of frustrated. And then I rolled 3 5-ups, and he didn't save any, and so I did a little dance. You can see I've pushed my Death Star unit up, kind of baiting that charge a little bit. Like, yeah, come on, bring it. I do D3 wounds and have toughness double your, or strength double your toughness. You can't stop me. Here you can see that I did move my wizard back. Um, I did get into the building with the bunker, and I pushed the Blackguard up. They're still in range of the charnel pit, but whatever. Actually, Chris was really interested in this charge against my Supreme Sorceress, and he asked me about her equipment. And I helped him make his list last night, so I went ahead and was open list with him as well. And I told him, well, she has 1 weapon skill 5 with hatred, strength 3 attack. And he was like, ooh. And I said, and she's got 3 wounds and she's toughness 4. And he was thinking, ooh. And I said, and the horse has 2 weapon skill 4, strength 4 attacks, and a stomp. And he was like, eh. And then I said, and she has the reverse ward save, so that she's going to have to roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to ignore any wounds that you do. And he said, okay. And so he decided not to. I guess that's next turn. I'm jumping the gun, but he definitely decides not to charge. I kind of punked him out a little bit. So this is Ogre's turn 2. You can see what happened. Again, I charged his Noblars in his last turn, so we're going to fight the Mournfang combat in this turn. So he charges his Lead Belcher into my flank, and he charges the Mournfangs, excuse me, the Maneaters into the front. And of course, because he's ridiculous, he gets an Ogre charge. And so that's just not going to go very well for me. But I think to myself, okay, well, my only chance is I'm going to have to challenge with my general, because my general is touching his general, and my BSB is touching his BSB. and I can't make way with my general to a different spot. So I'm going to have to challenge and hope that I can get through his ward save, that he rolls poorly, and that I do really well with my Executioner's Axe, because since he has the Obsidian Blade and the only thing I have to defend myself is an armor save, that's not going to go very well if he gets a chance to hit me. Here you can see that he charged my Corsairs in the flank with a Saber Tusk, and he pushed himself up to throw stuff at my Blackguard, but I'm not really concerned about either of those things. I'm actually thinking I'm going to kill the Saber Tusk in one round of combat and reform and be able to charge the flank of the Noblars on my next turn. I think I'm a little, in retrospect, I think I was a little optimistic, 2 attacks, to think I was going to get both wounds, but I'm used to additional hand weapon Corsairs fighting a Saber Tusk, or additional hand weapon Shades that hit on 3s and wound on 5s, rather than these Shades that only have 2 attacks. So, whatever. So this combat was brutal. I did 6 wounds, I think. I did 6 wounds with my all of my attacks. What I have, 8 and 3 is 24, 25, plus another 10. So I had 35 attacks that hit on 3s with the reroll, or hit on 4s with the reroll, that wounded on 5s. I did 7 wounds. That's not counting my BSB, of course. My BSB also did some wounds that contributed, but yeah, 7 overall. And then my general hit all 5 times. He charm shield 1 away, and I wounded 3 times out of the 4, and then he saved 2 out of the 3. So I only did 2 wounds to him with my Executioner's Axe. He struck back. He hit me 4 times out of 5 attacks, hitting on a 4. And then he wounded me all 4 times because, again, Dragonhide Banner. So he rerolled the 1s, and he ignored my armor save. So my general died. His BSB beat the crap out of my BSB, and then everybody beat the crap out of the remaining guys, and he tested not to pursue with the Man-Eaters, which was a good call, so he turned him around. And the Leadbelcher did pursue me, and I rolled an 11 to get away and keep 350 points alive, at least, and he rolled an 11 to catch me like a jerk, which was frustrating. And then afterwards, I thought to myself, I can't believe I didn't just attack that Leadbelcher that has 2 wounds left. I can't believe I couldn't have done that. And Chris just kind of shrugged and laughed at me a little bit. So that's looking frustrating. You can see up at the top that I have taken out the Mournfang. 2 of them, I killed 2 of them in combat, and then the Standard Bearer died when they broke. Now, what's really stupid about the Mournfang combat is the Mournfangs. Of course, I caused terror with the Hydra, so the Mournfangs failed their fear test. They revealed the Gleaming Pennant. They failed their fear test again. So they were hitting me on 5s, and so I beat a bunch of them. They did like 1 wound to the Cold One Cav, and I did 6 wounds to them, so they broke. And again, they needed like a 4 or something. Or no, they were stubborn. He had cast a stubborn spell. So again, they needed another 7, and they failed. So my Cold Ones failed to catch them, but I'm just going to push them off on the next turn. And the Hydra turned to reform to face the flank of the Man-Eaters. And the Hydra combat actually happened first, and I was concerned. I was thinking that I was actually going to be able to hold against the Man-Eaters, and obviously I wasn't. So I was thinking I was going to get the Hydra in to help relieve myself, and that didn't work at all. But I mean, he doesn't really have a lot to look at in the other direction. So that's that. Oh, I should mention he used his breath weapon in that combat, so he's down that as well. This is just an overview of the rest of the board after that Ogre turn 2. You can see that my um, Corsairs with the hand bows reformed to face the Saber Tusk. It was a push. I did 1 wound, I want to say, to him. I may not have done any wounds, but I have a rank. No, I had to have done a wound. But anyway, it was a push somehow. I guess I did a wound and had a rank, was 2, and he'd had a charge and a flank and no wounds. So it was a push, and I turned, and there I am right there. And you can see the Noblars up in my face, baiting me, and the Cold One Knights, which I should mention. Well, no, I'll get to that in a second. All right, so right here we've got the you can see my Cold One Knights in the background charged off the Mournfang, and then they also charged off the Noblars just to do something. They were never gonna. I didn't want to redirect them into the side of the Iron Guts. That was not going to work very well. My Cold One Knights in the back failed their stupidity again, so that's turn two. That's time 2 for this game. Uh, you can see my Blackguard charged the Noblars. They lost 4, I think, guys to the Noblars' dangerous terrain, but I decided it was worth the risk. I needed to go ahead and get them out of the way because with the death of my Death Star, I figured I have got to deal with the Iron Guts, which is his other big Death Star. So I have to find some way to deal with them and keep the Man-Eaters busy until I can deal with them as well. So I was thinking, okay, well, I'll use the uh, Shades and the Crossbowmen that are over on the left to, and maybe even the Hydra to get rid of the man eaters to keep them busy while I take out the Iron Guts. So of course I moved the Harpies up in a line, and the Harpies from the front of the Harpies where the Ogres were to line to the side of the um, Corsairs is exactly 12 inches. So he'd have to roll double sixes on the overrun to get in. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And he can't get into the cold ones, and he can't get into the blackguard. But I will get a reform with the blackguard after I beat the Noblars, which will allow me to do maybe get into his flank. Of course, the Iron Blaster's up there hanging out, being a jerk. So in Magic, again, remember I didn't have the Withering, so I had to do my little trick of start the Magic phase 3 inches away from the Tower of Blood, Steed of Shadows over, and then cast the Withering. I cast the Withering on the Man-Eaters, withered their toughness by 2, and I unloaded all hell into them, and I killed 4 Man-Eaters, and they passed their panic test, which is fine. They're leadership 9 with the reroll. But now I'm getting down to the part that I hate about Ogres, which is I have a real problem killing characters once they start being able to allocate um, attacks or ranged attacks onto characters rather than rank and file. It becomes exceedingly difficult for me to kill rank and file, which is one of the things that frustrates me the most about Ogres. um, I'm that part at least is compensated by some other issues that they have with characters. Obviously the lookouts are being worse, and having to buy the lookout Noblars and all that jazz. I mean, it is compensated for, but it really gets frustrating for me with my strength 3 shooting to try and wound people that have a high armor save and a ward save, eh, in the interest of getting points. Because if they weren't there, I could easily get rid of those man eaters just with volume of shots. But because the characters are there, I'm gonna probably never get those man eaters. So Ogre turn 3, he charges in the um, crossbowmen who stand and shoot, and I claim jokingly that I'm going to use my stand and shoot and I'm going to kill the Dragonhide banner guy so that so that the Dragonhide banner doesn't activate. And Chris laughs at me, and I do a couple wounds to each person. I think I do 2 wounds to the standard bearer, so he's on 1, and I do like 1 wound to the champion and 1 wound to the BSB and 1 wound to the general, which is really pretty good considering their magic items. But he gets, of course, another ogre charge, so that's going to suck a lot. Um, Especially coupled with the Dragonhide banner. So then I make jokes, oh, well, you're going to leave 2 or 3 people alive after your impact hits, and I'm just going to focus everything on your Dragonhide banner guy, and I'm going to get him, and you just watch. So we'll see how that goes. You can see here the reform I took with the Blackguard, and he went ahead and charged the Harpies and completed a charge. They only rolled a 6, so they were perfectly positioned. And you can see he completed the charge and reformed. And there was really not a good way to reform that didn't put a bunch of stuff in his flank. This may have been the worst reform that he could have done. The Hydra, of course, is in his flank. The Blackguard are actually in his flank barely, and the Cold One Knights are in his front, but have a pretty good ability to wheel past those Corsairs that are not going to charge and give a bunch of free combat res. Um, you can see his Iron Blaster turn to fire at the Hydra, so I'm not actually anticipating that the Hydra will even be able to attack. I'm assuming that it's going to die this turn. And he hits the Hydra dead on. It bounces and doesn't do anything, and he rolls a single wound. So the Hydra is really looking pretty dang lucky today, having missed the first turn cannonball by virtue of Chris attempting to cannonball my wizard, and then taking 2 cannonballs in the past couple turns and not giving anything up, just giving up single wounds. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. And this combat went about as predictably as you could expect. The big thing was he rolled with 4d3, he rolled 11 impact hits. So I had a single, and he re-rolled ones, of course, because of the Dragonhide banner. So I had a single guy left, my musician, who hit his standard bearer and wounded his standard bearer, and then his standard bearer made a 5-up ward, or 5-up armor rather, to stay alive. And then he beat the crap out of that last guy and reformed. So things are looking kind of scary. I'm going to have to try and block them off while I take care of the Iron Guts here on my turn 4. So here's my charges. Everybody made it. The farthest was the Blackguard that needed a 5, and everybody got what they needed. Excuse me. You can see how the Knights couldn't maximize all the way. My Corsairs there turned just to shoot some chaff. There's a Saber Tusk running around. I'm not really sure. They don't have a musician, and so this is when I start getting frustrated that I can't swift reform them and then move. Not because I want them to get closer to the Saber Tusk, but because I want them to get closer to blocking off the Man-Eaters and maybe getting even some extra shots in there. So of course that doesn't happen. You can see that in the very back of the picture. You can see that my Coldwood Knights have turned to face the Iron Blaster, and you can see behind the Iron Guts that I have given them -1 weapon skill so that they hit my Knights and Blackguard on a 5, and then I've given them -1 toughness, which makes them easier to wound with everything. You know, toughness 3 makes my Hydra wound them on 3s, or 2s rather. It makes my Blackguard and Steeds wound them on 3s, and it's really going to help me out a lot. I was hoping to get a 2 so the Blackguard wounded on 2s, but you know what? I'm not going to complain about it at all. Here's a blurry picture of my Shades coming up to block a charge on the Man-Eaters, and you can see that I shot and I did the final wound on the Standard Bearer, which was excellent. But now there's a champion left in that unit that has 2 wounds left, I believe, and so I have to kill him to get like 500 points. And you can see that the general and the BSB both have 3 wounds left. So I'm just kind of sacrificing that 96 points. And if you can see the very tip on the left, the very tip of that lead belcher, he is also in my front in case he charges. I get to stand and shoot. That's pretty much what's going on there. And this combat was ridiculously amazing. He did 1 wound to the Coldwood Knights, and he did no wounds to the Blackguard. Remember, he's hitting those guys on 5s. And what happened was the Blackguard came in with a monkey ton of attacks. They hit on 3s with the reroll. So they hit, I don't know, 20 something times. They wound on 3s, and I wounded so many times. Their strength 4 with the armor piercing banner. So there was no armor saves, and I think the Blackguard killed 5 Iron Guts before they could swing, and then my Knights killed another 2 before they could swing. Before anybody else swung, my handlers on the Hydra put 3 wounds on the Butcher, so my Hydra split his attacks against the Slaughtermaster and the Butcher and put 2 wounds on the Slaughtermaster and finished off the Butcher. And my Steeds couldn't finish off the Butcher, or the Slaughtermaster rather, and did like 1 more wound to the Iron Gut. So by the time he got back, he got to attack, there was the Slaughtermaster that was hitting on 5s and did the 1 wound to the Coldwood Knights. And there was one guy swinging at the Blackguard who just failed to hit on 5s, and then there was like 2 guys did 7 attacks swinging at the Knights, and they again the armor save plus the minus to hit and stuff it was huge. So of course they were on snakes, they broke. Um, the Hydra actually ran them down. The Blackguard and the Knights I think rolled like a 4. I think that 4 there in the foreground is theirs. The Blackguard rolled like a 5, and then the Hydra rolled like a 12. So he went crazy and caught him, which was excellent. I didn't want that wizard coming back, and so now things are starting to look better. Now I'm starting to think, okay, well, I've got this game under control. He's got 2 units, One of them is severely depleted, and one of them is an Iron Blaster. And I'm thinking that those 5 knights can take the Iron Blaster, and if not, I've got a mage and to help out. And then he's got the 3 man-eaters that I'd love to kill the characters, but I've got to kill the man-eater itself to get any points, and then some lead belchers. I should mention that the Slaughtermaster had the Hellheart, and he activated it this turn and got a 4, which hit the metal wizard in the tower. But in a fit of awesomeness, I rolled a 12 for the miscast, which, if you know your table, means that the miscast did not drain dice from me, which meant that I was able to use all 11 of my dice still after that miscast happened, which was, all things considered, pretty awesome. I think this is just an overview of what the board is looking like at the end of my turn 4 and what he's dealing with. I have that stuff. He's got what's in the picture plus a 2 wound lead belcher, so things are not looking very pretty for him. Here he moves forward, tries to get in range, shoots at the Hydra a little bit, doesn't really get anything. His lead belcher actually fires at me, hitting on 5s, on the shades, I should say, and doesn't really get anything. You can see in my turn 5 that I've gotten miasma. I'm big miasma'd him, so he's um, weapon skill -1, and he's toughness -3. So his one last man-eater is toughness 1, and his characters are toughness 2. So I'm going to try and shoot and do all sorts of stupid stuff to him and see if I can't get them off as well. Also in my turn 5, I charged the Iron Blaster, and it didn't do a wound to me, which I thought was very strange, but I did 3 or 4 to it on the charge, thanks to my strength 6, and I ran it down. And either I ran it down or it ran off the table. Actually, it did. It ran off the table, and I ran with it just so I could get off the table and make sure. So again, this is my turn 5. Really, his turn 4 didn't do anything except for move around and try to stay out of charge ranges. So this is Ogre turn 5 for you. He charges the lead belcher into the shades, who can't stand and shoot. He's too close, and he moves his man-eaters backwards. Now he was thinking he was going to do something smart, and he tried to swift reform, and I explained to him that you have to have a musician for that, and he was like, oh yeah, you're right, I don't have a musician. And his movement was down, but it was only by 1, so he still backed up 3 inches, just trying to. He thinks, oh, I can take the charge from the Hydra, but he doesn't want to take the charge from the Knights or the Blackguard, and he gets just out of the Blackguard range. The Knights are pretty far away, and the Hydra is about the only thing that can get in. And of course, if I charge the Hydra in, he'll just make way with his character, so I can't kill the Man-Eater. So I'm going to have to find something else to do. And awesomely, I kill the Lead Belcher. He kills 1 with his impact hit, and I kill it before he gets to strike. And so I'm feeling really awesome after that. And my Knights, I guess, are closer than I thought. I thought he was farther away, but I guess he's just going to wreck the Knights. I think the Tyrant would do all sorts of nasty things. And I'm starting to think, okay, well, if I get the Hydra in and I get the Knights in, because the Hydra's in his front and the Knights are in his front, he can make way. The Tyrant's going to wreck the Knights. The BSB will likely deal with the Hydra okay. And, I'm still going to have to roll pretty well to kill stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this at least, it's going to be a toss-up on my turn 6. We're going to see how it works. So this is the final picture, and the game ends on my turn 6, and this is what happens. I charge with the Hydra, and he flees because he's my cold ones fail stupidity, so they can't move, or they move a couple inches forward. So when my Hydra charges, he flees, which means that I don't have anything that can catch him. So the only thing I can do is, in my magic phase, I roll like 8 or 9 dice or 10 dice or something, and I fly over here. Remember, um, I Steed of Shadow over, and he doesn't stop it, which I thought was probably his biggest mistake in the magic phase all game long, was not stopping that Steed of Shadows. I guess he was saving dice to stop the pit. And then I throw miasma, and he allows it through. And again, I'm thinking, why did you allow miasma through? But he only had 4 dice or something, and miasma at least went off on like a 12 or 13. So I threw the pit, and afterwards, and I got double 6s. So he was saving all those dice for no reason, and so their initiative is down by 2. So the man-eater's on a 1, so he fails. He rolls a 4 and dies. The BSB is on a 2, or 1 or 2, so he rolls a 4 and dies. Those are okay. That would have happened even without the miasma. I still would have been able to pit that. Now turn, and the general was initiative 4, down by 1 or 2, rolled a 4, and auto died. And that's where I thought that miasma probably, with the man-eaters and the BSB on initiative 3, that's a 50-50 shot. The general's got a 2/3 shot to pass. I really thought maybe he should have tried to dispel the steed and then also the miasma, just to stop me from getting the setup, as it were. But anyway, as it turns out, I magic the ever-loving crap out of him. He fails all his initiative tests, and they all fall over and fall to their doom. All right, so again, the game, of course, ended with a massacre. I tabled him, and I had lost just shy of 1150 points. So I got some closing thoughts here, and the first one is, of course, never give up, even if your Death Star dies. And I got to tell you, I was pretty disheartened when he rolled in and just sandblasted my Corsairs. I thought, well, that, and I said to him, I said, man, that's the game. That's my general, my BSB. I mean, that is where 90% of his points came from. That unit was, with the general bonus, with the double banners, that unit was over 1,000 points, or almost, or close to 1,000 points, maybe 980 something. So it was ridiculous. Um, again, if that had happened in the center of my lines, I think that I would have had that he would have been a little bit better. But off on the sides, um, I was able to react to it. So first lesson: never give up, never surrender, which is something I struggle with when I get rolled. Um, and that leads into the second one, which is protect your Death Star if you bring one. Um, being out on the side, being dawn attack, I didn't have a whole lot I could do to protect it, but I could have done a lot more. I didn't have to rush it forward. I could have played it more conservatively. I had the shades over there. I had the crossbowmen over there. I could have really kind of played keep away with his man eaters until he had committed them somewhere else, or until he had committed them there, and I could have tried to force his hand, and I didn't, and and that's what I learned. If you're going to bring a 900 point unit, you have to protect it, and the same goes for him. The man eaters did really well, but like the Iron Guts got surrounded. The man eaters were way off on one side, and the Iron Guts just got surrounded. There was nothing they could do to not get just charged everywhere. And same thing with him. You got to protect your points, and I think maybe he could have used his saber tusks differently to block off those charges after he killed the harpies. Maybe he could have used them that way instead of just charging stuff, or trying to charge a wizard and then being punked out. And then almost next to last is magic is crazy. I can't believe how much magic swung that game for me. Once I started getting the withering off on units, they started dropping, and that's really why I took Lore of Shadow. I hate to take Lore of Shadow because I hate defaulting to Mind Razor with my friends. And if you'll notice, I didn't use Mind Razor at all. I used Withering, which is something I'm much more comfortable with. Throwing 4 or 5 dice at Withering is way better to me than throwing 9 to 12 dice at Mind Razor. The Withering remains in play, so you can dispel it in your next turn. But it also, as a penalty, but it also as a bonus, it affects shooting as well, which is something really interesting, and it helps me actually get stuff out of my shooting phase, and it helps me deal with stuff that's high toughness without resorting to Skill Razor. Um, Pit obviously won me the game. The whole thing with Steed of Shadows and um, the Lore Master Tower was really ridiculous. And I should mention that also I had the Focus Familiar, and we looked at this, and this never came up. But with the Focus Familiar and Lore of Shadow and Steed of Shadows, what it looks like you can do is you can place the Focus Familiar template or token somewhere within 6 inches of your wizard's starting position. And then you can Steed of Shadows, and you can move 20 inches. And then, because of the Focus Familiar, you then count as being in both places, because the Focus Familiar says you may use the Focus Familiars as your position to cast spells. So you're not forced to, so you can move your wizard 20 inches away, and you can have this giant bubble of shadow magic. And it's something that's really interesting, and it's something I'm really thinking I'm going to do more frequently with my Peg Rider. I much prefer Shadow uh, as a lore overall, minus Mind Razor, and I like Mind Razor. I just don't like relying on Mind Razor, and so I think I'm gonna do that a little bit more. Enfeebling is good, but I didn't have it. I didn't really need to cast it. Probably the best place to cast it would have been on the Man Eaters, but that magic phase before they charged me, I got like 4 dice, so it didn't help. And the final thing is, I really miss my Cauldron. I was telling Chris before on turn 5, I thought, I'm thinking about dropping the Supreme Sorceress and adding a second Dreadlord, probably on a Pegasus. Probably not the unkillable Dreadlord, although he may have the crown. Um, and then, taking 2 level 1 sorceresses, 1 metal, 1 fire, and then taking the Cauldron. And then my last turn showed up, and I completely got that unit because of the magic, and I thought, well, never mind, not trading the magic yet for a Cauldron. I have a Cauldron. I like it. I need to put it on the right base. I recently figured out what base a Cauldron is on. Mine's on a bigger base than that, so I have to resort there to taking it off of its base and putting it on a new one, but that's not a big deal. But I've just been thinking, trying to stay away from the old standbys. If you'll notice, there's no Cauldron, there's no unkillable Dreadlord. Um, I didn't use Mind Razor. I don't have the Sacrificial Dagger. Didn't take Lore of Fire. I took Lore of Metal. Although I am going to drop my level 1, my Lore of Metal mage to level 1, I really only need Searing Doom. That's not a big deal. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that it made sense. And I hope that you guys stick with me. Hopefully, I'll get some new battle reports up soon. Also, if you're following Bromance Wargaming, there should be a report up soon there from the 1600 Ogres versus 1650 High Elves, and if we're very lucky, there was a 2500 point game between Dark Elves, between Orcs and Lizardmen as well that maybe Dallas will put up. Anyway, that's it. That's the end. I hope you enjoyed, and if you like the content, please subscribe. Peace.